This is not good for the Iranian regime. Not to remind the world of Hitler. How long will this war continue? US and Israel's joint operation. The US president and Israel's prime minister have both said what they want, what their aim is for a favorable regime change in Iran. Leaders in Iran have been removed before, but the regime has survived. And how will this new leader, Ayatollah's son, affect the US's and Israel's desire for a regime change? Their fortunes are intimately tied to the regime. So are a range of administrators and bureaucrats in the Iranian government, as well as regime sympathizers among ordinary Iranians. They are motivated by a blend of Shiism and fierce nationalism to remain loyal to the regime.
You don't have any respect, huh?
The US president and Israel prime minister have called on the Iranian people, some 60% of whom are, below the age 30, to topple the regime once the US and Israel operations have crippled it. And so, should the US and Israel now pull back, since they have seemingly crippled their military force and the nuclear desire and plan and ambitions of the former Iranian administration?
Don't let it get to you. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it get to you.
What is the global and economic pain caused by this ongoing conflict? It says in the report that the regime has also been able to respond very quickly to outside aggression. It has already hit back at Israel and US military bases across the Persian Gulf using short-range and long-range advanced ballistic missiles and drones. While many of the projectiles have been repelled, some have hit their targets, causing serious damage. The United States has vowed to keep the strait open, but the IRGC is potentially well placed to block traffic from going through. There could be serious implications for the global energy supply and broader economy. So what does it look like for a prolonged war? How will it affect the many countries, neighboring and outside? Many countries that have close cooperation agreements with Iran, including China and Russia, have condemned the US and Israel actions. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio has also urgently called for de-escalation, a return to diplomatic negotiations, right? So how would this work for the US to pull back, for Israel to pull back, and allow for diplomatic negotiations, conversations to resume with this new leader? What is his thoughts on all of this? And how would he respond in an ongoing conversation to de-escalate the situation? Will the US need to put troops on the ground in Iran to monitor and keep things going peacefully? The IRGC said it had targeted Israeli government and military sites in Tel Aviv and elsewhere. As of the 10th of March, Israeli authorities said 12 people, all civilians, had been killed by Iranian missiles fired since the start of the war. On the 8th of March, 7 US service members had been killed. Of the Gulf states, the Bahrain has reported the highest number of casualties from a single strike on the 9th of March, in which 23 civilians were reported injured, including 4 children. The week prior, drones hit the US embassy in Saudi Arabia, and the drone also hit a car park adjacent to the US consulate in Dubai. 100,000 people, including around 200,000 children, are displaced from their homes, the United Nations said. So If this conflict continues, how much does it further the displacement of children and others? How does it affect the Strait of Hormuz, global economy with over 20% of its oil coming through that strait and around 25% of liquidated gas coming through the strait as well? Seems as if Iran is looking for a long-term, drawn-out war conflict to hurt the economy and to say that, hey, US, Israel, they attacked, and because of their attack, they have thus impacted and affected the global economy in this way. Wanting the rest of the world to look at Israel and US as being reckless, as not being thoughtful of the rest of the world's economy. But the US and Israel are saying, based on reports, that a regime change is necessary for the betterment of the Iranian people, with support, as said, 60%, which are under the age of 30. So with this greater percentage of support for the younger people than for the future generations, with this regime change that they're looking for, and a favorable one would be then better for these supporters. As it says, 60% of these people support this regime change. Would Iran conditionally give up the considerable power it has acquired through its regional scheming? In the view of many Iranians and of Western experts, the Islamic Republic attaches greater strategic importance to the militias it has deployed throughout the region than to its nuclear or even ballistic program. If we assume that the nature of the regime and its obsession with survival are the reasons for its predatory behavior, what does that imply for the West in terms of managing relations with Iran? Should it continue the strategy of suffocation led by Donald Trump and assume that the regime is on the brink of collapse? Hey, Iran would gain international recognition of its status as a threshold power than it would if it developed its nuclear program. Iran should be made to understand that by claiming to protect the Shia minorities in Arab countries, it will inevitably be perceived by its neighbors as pursuing an expansionist project, reminiscent of Hitler's. This is not good for the Iranian regime. Not to remind the world of Hitler. Not to remind the world of Hitler. And so, the US and Israel looking for a regime change is very then important to the region and for the global economy and safety.
Don't let it get to you, don't let it get to you, don't let it get to you.